Hi guys, Tracy here, and today I'm going to be sharing some of these Christmas cards that I've been making with you guys. I'm going to do a process video where I'm going to make this card right here, and then I'll walk you through how I made these other cards. And I also have a really fun giveaway for you guys today. This giveaway is from Stampin' Up. When they sent me my supplies for making these cards, they actually sent me some extras so that I could do a really fun giveaway. I'm really excited to be able to offer such a wonderful holiday card making package to one of my lucky viewers. We have a complete set of the Christmas Staircase Thinlit dies. Those are the dies that coordinate with this Ready for Christmas stamp set. The stamp set itself is also up for grabs, and two different paper packs. This one is Wood Textures Designer Series paper pack, and this one is Quilted Christmas Designer Series paper pack, and there's actually two of these up for grabs. One of these, the stamp set and the die set, all being given away. Stay tuned to the end of this video so that you can hear about how you can be entered to win this awesome prize pack. Thank you so much to Stampin' Up, who supplied me with my supplies for these cards, which I'm going to be showing you as I make this card, but they also provided me with that really generous prize that I can offer to one of you guys. So stay tuned for that at the end. I'm going to start by just showing you guys these cards. I'll start with this one. For this one, I cut the staircase twice. I cut it out of a wood grain pattern paper, a dark wood grain pattern paper, and then also a white painted wood grain paper. And then I paper pieced them together so that I basically separated the railing from these posts and also separated the stairs from the posts. And then I just placed them on top of the wood die cut piece, and basically to have a two-tone staircase with wooden spindles, with natural wooden spindles, and then painted wooden stairs and a railing. And then I used the dies in the set to cut these really cute branches, and the dog himself, I painted him with Stampin' Right markers, and it made him look like he's decorating the staircase, which I think is really cute. And then I stamped a sentiment from the stamp set there as well. Here I made a similar staircase where I basically cut two versions of the same staircase die. That die looks like this, by the way. Here it is right here. And it does emboss the panels under the stairs as well. And so I just ran my marker along the embossed area. I cut this out of plain white paper, and then I just ran a really light gray Copic marker around the embossed areas just to make it look like a wood panel, just to give it a little bit more dimension. And I just layered, I basically cut out this hole with my scissors. I just cut around this whole section right here, and then just layered it on top of the other die cut that I had already cut out of the plain wood veneer, not wood veneer, but the plain wood paper. So then I stamped this stamp right here and cut it out with this die right here and placed it on my staircase, stamped the little picture frames, colored them in, cut them out, and put them on my background. I also stamped the tree on my background, glued a glitter star, and this is something that I cut from glitter tape here with the die that comes in the kit. That comes in the die set right there. So I cut and stamped the table, I cut and stamped and colored the cookies, and those are all from the dies in the stamp sets. And I also pieced together some little cut out gifts that I also colored and cut out. And the sentiment is inside on this one. It says, "Sharing the joy at Christmas and always." And then this one, I stamped the tree in the background and the sentiment in the background. Then I stamped and cut the table, stamped, cut, and colored the cookies, stamped, cut, and colored the puppy dog, and then I just used some of the pattern paper from this pack right here to make a wooden floor to make a cute little scene. And this says, "A wish for everything merry at Christmas and always." So this one I'm going to show you how I made. So I'm starting with the quilted Christmas cardstock pack from Stampin' Up, and I just grabbed the red out of that sheet and I cut the 8.5 by 11 piece of paper in, well, it's cardstock actually, in half to make a standard A2 card. And then I scored it at the halfway point. And I'm going to cut this piece of crumb cake cardstock in half as well. And I cut it in half so that I could have one, so that my scraps could make a card base, but I'm actually making a mat or a liner. So there's the other half of that, and here's the other half of the red piece. I'm just going to make those into extra cards while I'm at it. I almost always do that when I'm making cards. I try to cut my scraps in such a way that I can use them for either card bases or layers on my cards. And so I have made some cards with this collection already. So you saw that I had a whole bunch of scraps there from the wood pack. And I'm going to start by stamping my tree. And I'm just going to use this little foam pad to make my stamping come out a little bit more smoothly. And I'm actually going to make a mistake here. So when I stamp that down, I get a little line over on the left side. You can barely see it, and it's not that big of a deal, but I did want this to be, you know, I'm going to give this card to somebody special. It is a pretty labor-intensive card, so I want it to be perfect if I'm going to spend all that energy making this really beautiful tree. So I started by stamping the tree, and you're actually not going to see that. It's just there to be a template upon which I can layer a whole bunch of pieces of greenery that I'm now going to cut with my Big Shot. This is my manual die cutter from Big Shot, from Sizzix, and I'm just going to play around here. It's been a while since I made these cards, and so I forgot that I needed to use a shim. So I'm going to take this out, cut this cardstock, put it on there, and then I'm going to pick out all of the pine tree branches. So there are 2 clusters of branches and then 3 separate branches. And when I run that through, it cuts, but it doesn't cut all that great. It's going to take a while for me to punch those out, and the little holes might not come out all that great. So so that's when I remembered, wait a minute, I need a shim. So I'm going to cut 2 more pieces, and I do need a lot of these, so I will be doing a lot of die cutting. I decided to remove my grid mat because it shifts around a lot when I'm die cutting, so I prefer, if I'm going to do a lot of die cutting, I prefer to just cut on my bare table. And so now I have that shim in place. It's just a blue piece of cardstock that has the word shim on it, so I don't accidentally throw it away. And I'm running these back and forth and back and forth. I really don't have to do that. I'm using the Precision base plate, which is it helps you to cut intricate dies. And so I really didn't have to run it back and forth, but I just wanted to make sure that it was cut. It doesn't hurt to do that, so that's what I'm doing. I decided to add a second shim, and that's a little bit too tight, so I won't be doing that anymore. But you never know, right? So yeah, there are those pieces, and I'm just going to cut a whole bunch. I don't know what I'm doing here, but oh, I know what I'm doing. I lost one of my little branch dies, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And so I'm just looking for it. Look at me, look. And you know where it is? It's actually on one of the branches. So I didn't punch it out. Like, I didn't use my little paper piercers. So there are little holes in those dies so that if the paper gets stuck in the die, you can just use your paper piercer to poke it right out. And that is what happened. One of those branches has the die still in it. So I'm just counting how many I have. I think I need 8, but I'm going to go ahead and cut 10 just in case. And 8 of the big clusters, I mean. And so so that means in order for me to cut 10 of the big clusters, I really only have to cut 5 times because there are 2 clusters in each time that I pass it through. So I will cut out the rest of this because it's pretty repetitive. So once I cut 10 of the big branches, which meant 5 passes on my big shot of those dies. Now I'm just grabbing a piece of yellow scrap paper. It really doesn't have to be yellow because you're not going to see much of it, but I do like it to be yellow just in case you see the edges, depending on the angle from which you look at the card. And I just took 2 pieces of the glitter tape and made them so that they're stuck to the paper really, really tightly so that it looks like one chunk of glitter paper instead of a strip of glitter tape. And the reason I did that was because the glitter tape is not quite as wide as the star die that I'll be using. Then I just used some black ink to stamp twice the set of 3 Christmas decorations. And now I'm using Whisper White cardstock here. And that other one was Cherry Cobbler, the red one. And on the Whisper White cardstock, I'm just going to stamp 1 of each of these little pictures that will hang on my wall. And I really love how Whisper White cardstock works with black ink. It receives the ink so nicely. It really is my favorite stamping paper. I don't use it for when I use Copic markers, but I don't plan to use Copics here. I wanted the coloring on this card to be really, really basic and simple, mostly because I don't have the skills to do anything too complicated. But also, you know, I just like the idea of just coloring things in and not having to use any fancy techniques or think too hard about what you're doing. So I just have my real red Stampin' Right marker here, and I am just making this parcel be striped, and then I'm just going to color in the ribbon on this parcel, or little package or gift, I guess. And then on the last one, I stamped it twice because the first time it didn't stamp very well. On the last one, I'm also just going to color in the ribbon in the red. And these are the little details that will be, some of it will be covered up by the branches of the tree and so on. And so it doesn't really have to be perfect, but I am being a little bit more careful on these because they're going to be on the wall and they won't be covered up as much, but these Christmas gifts will be covered. So keep that in mind. You don't have to be too careful. Like if I went out of the lines, for example, I wouldn't go and restamp this and start all over again. Now I'm coloring this in this way because this is not a Copic marker. So these markers don't blend and spread out the way that Copic markers do. And if you just kind of scribble in a whole bunch of different directions to fill this in, it'll end up looking like you can see the layers. And so what I decided to do was kind of use that layering, the fact that these markers show the layers. I wanted to kind of just use that to my advantage by making that it almost looks like it has a corduroy paper or like a waffle paper or something on it, because you can see the little stripes on it, or it looks maybe like striped paper or something. And so I just had to figure out the right color for this snowflake. I didn't want it to be too bright blue because the colors in this card are very warm. So using a blue, I wanted it to be a warm blue. Now this is probably my very favorite shade of brown in the Stampin' Up! Collection. It is Baked Brown Sugar. It was an in color a couple of years ago, and I adore this color for anything wood. It looks really beautiful. It doesn't have that orangey look that wood sometimes has, but it's just a really nice neutral brown that looks like wood, as I mentioned. So now those are all colored in, and there is a die. So the dies for these shapes are in the die set. But I want these to not have the little white border around them. I want them to be trimmed right down to the very edge. So I'm just hand cutting them. I sometimes find it easier when things are squares and rectangles to just hand cut them anyways, rather than cut them out with the die cutting machine. So these shapes are particularly conducive to hand cutting, but also I really didn't want that little white halo around the edges of them. So I am cutting them with my Cutter Bee little fussy cutting scissors. I'm just showing you that those dies are right there, and I could have easily used them if I really wanted to. The yellow that I used was Daffodil Delight. And I find that it really brightens up like the red and green color scheme. I love adding yellow to a red and green color scheme. Red and green is really my favorite Christmas color scheme. I really do like that kind of classic look. So now I'm bringing all of my pieces over here, and I'm going to use my Stampin' Up! Paper piercer here to just get all those little holes, those little pieces out of the holes of the branches. Now that can be pretty tedious, so what I've decided to do instead was I grabbed my Sizzix tool, and it's just like a roll, like a brush that is on a roller, and you just kind of roller it over. It's not used for this purpose. It's supposed to be to get the little bits of paper that are left behind in your dies to get them out. But I find that it works with these. It also starts to give these branches a slightly curled up look, which is kind of nice when you go to glue them down to the tree. So see how that got a good, you know, a couple of hundred of those little pieces out without me having to actually poke them out. So that makes this process quite a bit quicker than if I had to poke every single one of those holes out of the branches. So I'm pretty pleased with that strategy for speeding this up, because when I made that card the first time, it was really labor intensive. Like, it really did take a long time. And as I was doing it, I was thinking, I don't know if I'm going to want to make more of these cards. It's so time consuming. But then the card was so nice at the end that I decided, yes, I would do it, even though it is labor intensive. And then I figured out this little trick for making it faster. So here I go, just die cutting those pieces that I had already prepared before I took the little bits out of the trees and colored the pictures and the gifts. And I love that you can die cut all three of those little ornaments with one die cut. That's awesome that you can both stamp and die cut it just with three of them at a time. That's really great. So now I have my Wink of Stella markers here, and I'm just adding glitter to it. And I started by using my pink glitter marker because I thought it might change the color. I know I'm kind of coloring tone on tone, like pink on top of red is not really going to change the color all that much, but I thought it might change it a little bit and that it might be nice to do that. And so I wasn't sure if it was getting darker just because it was wet or if it was because I was using the pink marker. So I tried out the clear marker, and they seem to look the same whether I used the places that I used the clear and the places that I used pink. So you don't have to bother with putting different colors of Wink of Stella in different places when you die cut it in red. Now I could have die cut those in white and then colored in the little designs, but to save time, I decided to just die cut them in red, so that even though that gives me a little red border around the edges of it, I really don't mind that look at all. I'm using a little bit more glue here than I really need to use. This is Tombow Mono Multi Adhesive, and it's super sticky. It dries really, really strong, and you do not need to use as much as I was using there. I just went a little overboard. So see what I'm doing? I'm just grabbing a branch and figuring out how it fits on the template that I stamped, and it takes a total of 6 branches to fill that tree. Just a bare minimum, right? So just to fill all of the lines that were stamped, it takes 6 of those branches. So that would be 3 passes with the dies. But now, because I remember I made 10 of those instead of just 6, I am cutting them up and fitting them into all of the little in-between places. And what this does is it just thickens up my tree and gives me more branches to hang things on, and just makes it look a little bit more luxurious than it did just by using those 6 bare minimum that I needed to use just to cover up the stamp. So after I'm finished cutting up the branches and putting the clusters of branches in, now I'm going to move on to putting in the individual branches. And it adds just a little bit of visual interest. And I did start at the bottom and work my way up. And what that does is it makes sure that all of the branches can fluff out properly. If you started at the top and worked towards the bottom, you'd be gluing on top of some of the branches that you'd want to stick out. 2 more branches up there just for a little bit more dimension up at the top. And now my tree is ready. So before I decorate it, I am going to cut out some flooring. I've been reflooring the room next door to my scrap room, so I've been cutting actual flooring lately. So it was kind of fun and easy to just cut flooring using a paper trimmer instead of having to use a saw. And I'm just going to trim it down like this. And there's that misstamped tree still on the back side of my crumb cake cardstock. There's a mouthful for you. And now this linen thread comes on a card that results in some, like, because of the way that it's packaged, it has kinks in it. And so what I do is I just run it through my hands a couple times just to soften up all of those hard edges and make it more soft and flowy instead of crinkly. I'm going to start it by kind of adding a glue dot to the top, and that's where my first Christmas ornament is going to go. So don't worry, it looks like I'm leaving an exposed glue dot there, but I'm not. I'm going to stick my first red ornament right there where the glue dot is holding the end of the linen thread. This linen thread gives my tree a real woodsy decorated look, like a very natural themed look to it, and I really like that. I'm just going to use another glue dot on the other end of this thread like that. So I just looped it around and covered it up by another branch, and I will stick a Christmas gift under there too. So I want that gift to go there so it'll cover the glue dot, and then I'll layer the other gifts so that they fill out the area under the tree. It doesn't have to be even or perfect because a real Christmas tree isn't even or perfect either. So there's that first red ornament that has to cover the glue dot that was there. And I decided to add all of these ornaments using glue dots. I think when I made the card the first time, I used regular tape runner adhesive, but these glue dots really are so convenient and they are super sticky, so I like them. And I used all 6 of the ornaments on this tree. I think on the other tree I only used 5. And then I had these gold sparkly enamel dots, and I thought they looked really beautiful with the star on the top of the card, and I decided to cluster them throughout the tree so that they were sort of like in clusters of a couple of enamel dots along with each of the red cardstock ornaments. And these give this tree a lot of dimension because they're really dimensional enamel dots. And they have the glitter just kind of like embedded in them. So they really do look like those baubles on a Christmas tree. I'm going to fiddle around to make sure that they look balanced. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I do want it to look, relatively balanced. Now, I forgot to do my sentiment. I should have done my sentiment before I put all of the dimensional things on this card, but I'm going to stamp around it anyways. So this is a sentiment that comes beside each other, like the word sharing and then the rest of the sentiment are beside each other. But as you see, I just selectively inked and I used washi tape to block off the part that I don't want to get any ink on it. So I ink it up and then I take off the washi tape, and then this says "The Joy," and I just stamped that underneath. So I like how that looks, and now I'm just going to position these little photos, or pictures, I guess. They're like wall hanging pictures. I'm going to position them in a balanced kind of a way that fills up this space on the other side of the tree and just adds a little bit of visual interest and makes it look really homey and like it's a real tree in a real room. I put a dot in the center and above each of them, and that just makes it easy for me to draw my little triangles that are the strings that hold those wall hangings in place. And now I mount the whole thing on my card base that I made at the very, very beginning. And now this is a card liner. I pre-cut card liners to 4 1/4 by 5, and that's just a little bit smaller than the size of a card. It's basically the same size as the crumb cake card that the whole card is made on. And that'll give me a little border around the inside of my card as well. And there we go. The only difference between the one I made off screen and this one is that I added some of these really pretty sparkly enamel circles and enamel dots, and they look so much like baubles on a Christmas tree. I really love them. They're so pretty. So it says sharing the joy on the outside and then inside at Christmas and always. And I can write a little sentiment right there. So I am going to have so much fun making more of all of these cards. These are going to be the cards that I'm going to give, not mass produced cards, because they're just too special, I think, to send, to make 50 each of, and they will take a long time to make a lot of, but these are going to be the cards that I give to those very special people during the holidays. So if you would like to win all of the supplies that you need to make these cards, that includes the Ready for Christmas stamp set. That's a set of clear stamps. It includes 20 stamps, everything you see here on the front cover, and also this set of Christmas staircase dies. These are the dies that I used for all of these cards, the stamps and the dies. And then also from Stampin' Up, the Wood Textures Designer Series paper pack, which I used for all of the wood grain elements on all of these cards. And then as a bonus, 2 Quilted Christmas 6x6 Designer Series paper packs. These I didn't use on these cards, but I'm really excited and looking forward to using these on some of my mass-produced cards. So you will have all of the supplies that you need to make these cards and many, many more in this prize pack. The only thing that you would have to add would be your own cardstock and envelopes. So if you'd like to win these, just leave me a comment below and I will randomly choose a winner at the end of the week to win these supplies. I'll send them out to you in time for you to make some special cards for the holiday season. Take care and have a really great scrappy week, and thank you so much to Stampin' Up for supplying both the prize as well as the supplies that I worked with during this video. Take care and have a great week.